Na mtazamaji, turejee huko Mombasa ambapo kongamano la siku mbili linaloleta pamoja mashirika tofauti na taasisi za serikali limeng'oa nanga rasmi hii leo. Hebu tusikize yanayoendelea.
That governs regulatory authorities. Our policies must be dynamic, responsive to the needs of our society, and aligned with international best practices. Similarly, our legal framework should provide clarity, consistency, and enforceability to enable these entities to fulfill their respective mandates effectively. Our regulatory authorities and agencies are confronted with several challenges that impede the execution of their mandates. These range from bureaucratic inefficiencies to resource constraints, from regulatory capture to technological disruptions. The hurdles are enormous. The rapid pace of change in technology, finance, and healthcare sectors poses unique regulatory dilemmas that demand innovative solutions. Moreover, lack of coordination and coherence among regulatory bodies sometimes leads to duplicity of efforts and wastage of resources. This is a state of affairs that cannot be allowed to continue. Ladies and gentlemen, currently, our regulatory landscape comprises a staggering 78 state corporations functioning as regulatory authorities and agencies. Perhaps this number could have grown. The maintenance of support and governance structures for these entities incurs substantial costs, often burdening the Treasury. And when we say the Treasury, we actually mean the taxpayer. This financial strain can inadvertently lead regulatory bodies to prioritize revenue-generating activities over their primary mandate of regulatory oversight. Instead of focusing on safeguarding citizens and ensuring collective sectoral regulation, they may become overly preoccupied with collecting licensing fees and income-earning projects such as real estate ventures. It is evident that we require a more proactive and forward-thinking approach to address this challenge and explore practical solutions for streamlining our regulatory framework. It is also necessary to be blunt and address the elephant in the room: regulatory overlaps and duplication. This is a real problem for which we must find a solution, because in addition to the complexities posed by varying regulations at the county level, enterprises across our nation are confronted with a maze of conditions, requirements, fees, charges, and levies imposed by multiple government agencies and regulatory bodies. This may require tough decisions to be taken to give effect to the merging of certain regulators. As an indication of the magnitude of the problem, for instance, the manufacturing sector, where institutions such as the Kenya Bureau of Standards, the National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, and the Departments of Weights and Measures all assert their authority over aspects such as labeling and inspection. This overlapping mandate often leads to confusion and inefficiencies for businesses striving to comply with regulatory requirements. Let me give another example. The food and beverage processing industry faces a similar challenge, with regulation spanning across multiple entities like NEMA, county governments, the Kenya Bureau of Halal Certification, and the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Services, KEPHIS. Even in the crucial area of waste management, the jurisdiction is shared between county governments and NEMA, adding another layer of complexity to compliance efforts. In the financial sector, there exists an overlap among regulatory bodies like the Capital Markets Authority, the Insurance Regulatory Authority, and the Circle Societies Regulatory Authority, SASRA. Consolidating their functions under a unified framework would undoubtedly enhance the collective impact and streamline regulatory processes. In the realm of intellectual property protection agencies, such as the Kenya Industrial Property Institute, KIPI, the Kenya Copyright Board, and the Anti-Counterfeiting Agency, all play distinct yet interconnected roles. By harnessing their expertise within a consolidated framework, we can eliminate redundancies and foster a more efficient system for safeguarding intellectual property rights. In the aviation sector, the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority is responsible for overseeing various aspects of civil aviation, including safety oversight, air navigation services, and aircraft registration. However, within this domain, other entities, such as the Kenya Airports Authority and the State Department of Transport, also hold significant regulatory roles. While the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority focuses on safety and regulatory compliance, Kenya Airports Authority manages airport infrastructure and operations, where there is often a duplication of efforts and conflicting directives. Furthermore, there is an element of uncertainty in some quarters with regard to which of these entities should oversight training schools, given that their roles are cross-cutting. I am aware that on account of the regulatory environment in aviation, we now have a situation where businesses prefer to have their aircraft serviced in Uganda and as far as Egypt, thus denying Kenyan businesses the opportunity. On this one, I can even emphasize that we have a situation where I have personally witnessed a situation where the Kenya Air Force, which actually boasts of the best engineering people in aviation, are struggling for more than a year to actually get a maintenance license. Kenya Air Force being taken in circles. That speaks volumes. The examples above are not exhaustive, and they are by no means the only instances where there are actual and perceived overlaps. These examples are provided so that we can start a conversation on enhancing the efficiency and the effectiveness of our regulatory authorities and agencies. In doing so, ease the burden on the exchequer and make it easier to conduct business in Kenya, not just for our citizens, but also to attract foreign investments. As we embark on this journey of revitalization and re-energization, let us draw inspiration from global best practices and benchmarks. Benchmarking against international standards of regulatory excellence will help us glean valuable insights and identify innovative approaches to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of our regulatory framework. Please do not interpret this as a carte blanche to now arrange for benchmarking trips. My intention here is to provoke you to research online using available technology and infuse global best practices into our local regulatory environment. And I can tell you that the head of public service will not approve certain travels because they end up on his desk. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to express appreciation to the head of the public service for taking the lead in streamlining the regulatory authorities and agencies. And in this, I was telling him that to the best of my reflection, and I've been around government for some time, I cannot recollect when regulatory authorities, in particular, were convened to have this kind of dialogue. There are usually other convenings, but this one is a unique one, just focused on the regulatory. I also want to commend the head of public service for one very significant move. The powers of the Inspectorate of State Corporations had been curtailed for 7 years. Remember that. Remember the 7 years of Egypt. Because the previous administration had not facilitated the appointment of the State Corporations Appeals Tribunal, a necessary tool to give effect to the surcharge mandate of the Inspectorate. Under the guidance of the head of public service, tribunal members and the chairpersons were appointed, and the Inspectorate now has the power to surcharge. This power to surcharge is a critical tool in the war against corruption. 7 years. Just imagine. 7 years. People by design just making sure an entity of government is rendered dysfunctional, deliberately. As we speak here, as I talk about 7 years there, try and reflect, you as a regulator, if you go into your archives, how long have you taken to dispense with a decision that is required so that a business decision can be made one way or the other? Have you had it for 7 years? Have you had it for 5 years? Have you had it for 3 months? This is a time for us to look at ourselves internally. And don't say, I'm looking at you because I'm pointing a finger at you. If you know there is something like that, this is a time for you to reform yourself. With regard to the issue of corruption, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission recently released the National Ethics and Corruption Survey 2023. The ESCC also provided a template on the common weaknesses and loopholes in MDAs. Both of these will be shared with you by the Secretariat of this meeting. During the meeting of the National Development Implementation Committee, where we work again closely with the head of public service, in which the principal secretaries present today would have attended, we touched on the ESCC report and template, and it was agreed that